to presenting to you and also hearing from you during the course of this session. We hope it will be interactive. We welcome questions. We'll be doing a little bit of a breakout later to hear from you as well. So the topic we're going to be talking about today is providing legal services remotely, and including areas of active conflict. And we're going to be hearing from one of our participants and panelists in a little bit, who's in the Ukraine and actually providing legal services remotely, as we speak, in Ukraine, in that area of active conflict. So that's going to be very, very interesting to hear. Providing legal services remotely has really become quite much more popular in the last couple of years, primarily as a result of the pandemic and COVID-19. Although even before the pandemic, legal service providers were finding ways to provide legal services remotely because it can be more efficient to provide legal services that way. And there often are barriers to meeting in person. But the pandemic really brought this all to be a key topic. And because of technology that's available today, including meetings like the one we're having today, where we can meet on a Zoom session as opposed to meeting in person, there are lots of opportunities to provide legal services and expand access to justice in a remote environment. And while today legal service providers are able to meet with their clients more easily because of vaccinations and some of the lifting of the COVID requirements, again, oftentimes it's more attractive to do something remotely, because there are barriers often, especially in rural areas, to meeting with clients, often to meet with them in person. They may have work schedule problems, they may have caregiving responsibilities, there may be issues with transportation. And if you're only going to have a half-hour meeting with someone, sometimes it's better to do that remotely than to spend an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours trying to put together an in-person meeting. So the things we've learned in the last 2 or 3 years reacting to the pandemic has really assisted us in determining the best ways we can provide for clients using remote tools. And this session is going to highlight global examples of remote pro bono projects. And you're going to hear some areas where, again, I mentioned you're going to hear from someone in the Ukraine, you're going to hear from a presenter in Kenya, and we also have a panelist from Twitter who's going to talk about social media and access to and some of the social media programs that can assist nonprofits in providing legal services remotely. So the goal here, of course, is for us to enhance access to justice. That's the main topic of the Pro Bono Conference and the Access to Justice Exchange. And providing legal services remotely is one and a very important tool that we have to be able to achieve that goal. So with that, I'm going to do introductions and then we'll get on with our presentation. My name's Andrew Valentine, and I'm with the law firm DLA Piper. We're a global law firm with offices in 40 plus offices around the world. We also have a nonprofit pro bono arm called New Perimeter, and I'm going to have Sarah talk a little bit about that. But it's a nonprofit arm of our law firm that focuses 100% on providing pro bono internationally, pro bono projects, trainings, services, and teaching. And I'm very, very happy to be participating today. So I'm going to have everyone who's going to be part of this session do a brief introduction, and then we'll move on with the session. So let me start with Marlon.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're covering all time periods during the day. My name is Marlon Manuel. I am based in Manila, in the Philippines. I work at Namati as part of the network team, convening and supporting the Legal Empowerment Network. Thank you, everyone.
Sarah?
I'll pass it. Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, sorry.
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone, and good evening from Boston, Massachusetts, where I am right now. Delighted to join you. As Andrew mentioned, I'm also part of DLA Piper. I'm co-director of New Perimeter, which is our global pro bono initiative, and very excited to join you this morning.
Great. Yevgen.
Hi to everyone. Yevgen Poltenko. I'm happy to represent here Legal Development Network. It's a Ukrainian association of civil society organizations, community-based organization started in 2009, which provide legal aid, legal empowerment, legal education, mobilization of communities, research and advocacy, as I mentioned, in communities of Ukraine. Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you. Say?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm Say Salvador. I'm a trained lawyer. I'm based here in the Philippines. I used to work for a nonprofit organization that provides virtual legal aid, but now I'm the public policy partnerships and communities lead for Twitter. You may contact me at say_Salvador on Twitter, and we can have a chat there. So basically later I'll talk about why Twitter for nonprofits, our initiatives with nonprofits, and how you as nonprofits that provide virtual assistance can maximize the use of Twitter for your work. So just a caveat, you'll probably think that, oh, these are very, very basics, but the ideas that I will share later may be basics, but because since we're now very digital, these are just some tips that hopefully may help you in our work. And given my background coming from virtual pro bono, I've seen that these tips can really be helpful. It's just a matter of how you maximize what's available out there. Thank you.
Great. We look forward to hearing from you more on that. Michael, could you please introduce yourself? We were having some technical difficulty. Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm the pioneer of Women Business Hub, and I'm a feminist. I work with marginalized women and marginalized community, that is gays, lesbians, transgendered, the people who are still finding it hard to access the privileges of having highly protected civil rights. We are based in Kenya, and mostly we work in the western part of Kenya, where we are almost bordering Kenya, Uganda. Our city is in Kisumu. And majorly, we are focusing on one of the key things that we have realized that in Africa is very instrumental in giving people dignity, and that is property rights. And you look at the way the gender dynamics is dictating how you are viewed and perceived, even in terms of work, in terms of earning, accessing property. And those are the key areas that we are keen about. And I'm happy to be here because when we tried the guides, it really opened for us a great opportunity that we have never experienced before. Thank you.
Great. Look forward to hearing more about your program as well in a few minutes. So now you've learned something about all of us. We'd like to try to learn something about all of you. So we're just gonna conduct a quick Zoom poll. So if I could have the Secretariat please post the poll. We have 4 questions that we'd like to ask all of the audience, the participants, so that we learn where you're from, and we're doing these one by one. So let's do these as quickly as we can. Maybe just spend 30 seconds answering this poll. So if you could please answer the poll, which is, on which continent do you live? And it looks like it's translated in Lao in the already in the poll, but if there's other translation going on, if you could translate the question, that would be great. So we would like, I see 114 participants. Let's get as many people to answer the question as we can. And the next, well, let's take a minute. We'll take 1 minute from now. All right, we'd love to have more responses. We have 20 responses. So if everyone could just take a moment. Asia, Australia, Africa, Europe, North America, South America, Antarctica. No one from Antarctica yet. I'll give you a preview of the results. All right, we have close to half now. I think we'll go ahead. Can we just go ahead and post the answers? Do I end the poll, or can the Secretariat do that?
Andrew, I think we have the 4 questions in the same poll. So
Oh, okay.
we can go through the 3 other questions before we show the results. Otherwise,
oh, I see. They're all together. Yeah, so let's go to
Yes.
question number 2. We could scroll. Oh, are they being answered? I can only see one on the screen.
yes,
I see.
they are,
Okay,
yeah,
so
they're all
yeah,
open
so
now,
there's
so
okay,
we
so
can
there's
ask.
4 questions. Let's take another minute then. I thought we were doing them one at a time. My apologies. Let's take another 1 minute to go through the poll.
Sorry, Andy, if we can report on that.
I'm sorry, what's that? Did we already post? Okay, I think we're sort of static. So can we post a poll? Can the participants see the poll, or?
Yeah, we can see the poll, Andrew, just so you know.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you, those of you who were able to respond. This is helpful for us to see where people are from. So primarily we'll see from question 1, a strong contingent from Asia. So that makes sense given that this is the Asia Pro Bono Conference, and thank you for joining. We have one from Australia. We know we have, those of us who are presenting, we're not answering the poll, but we know we have Michael from Africa, and it's great to have him on this as well. Someone is on from Europe. Sarah and I are from North America, so that's where we are from globally. In terms of the makeup of who we are, looks like about 20% of the participants are lawyers, and 8% are law professors or teachers. So that's great. I'm going to jump to the down a couple, and then a large contingent of students, so 40%. So between teachers and students, we have about 50% of our audience. That's terrific. Several paralegals and social workers, and then a group called Other, which is some other type of legal service providers. In terms of the third question, the types of online remote services that people are currently using, and this one you could select many answers. It looks like all of the all of the things that we listed are being used pretty heavily by this particular group. Teleconferencing, video conferencing, like what we're doing now, 44%, attending webinars, 27%. Hotlines is great. 17% of people said that they are probably using or incorporating hotlines into their providing legal services. And we know from experience that providing those types of services where people can call in and get information quickly and efficiently without having to meet in person can be very, very impactful. So it's great to see that number. What are the biggest challenges of working remotely? And we see this all over the globe, but really a lot more obviously in areas where it's more rural. But unreliable internet is big. Even in the best areas, internet can be unreliable and can have an impact on how you communicate with your client if you're doing it remotely. Lack of adequate bandwidth is a similar issue, that even if you have reliable internet, you don't have enough power in that internet connection to be able to communicate efficiently. I think that has been improving over the years, and certainly over the last couple of years, and will continue to improve. But those are very big obstacles to providing legal services remotely. Inability to connect in a personal way, of course, yes, that is something that is a big challenge, because sometimes meeting in person is really the only way you can connect with your client or with the person you're meeting with, and the only way you can really get them to trust you and open up to you. So oftentimes there's a balance of doing some legal services remotely and some legal services in person, but connecting in a personal way is always an obstacle to meeting in an environment like this, like on Zoom. It's very different than being in a room together and talking. So I think we can go ahead and stop sharing the poll. Thank you all for participating in that. And I'm going to turn this over to Sarah and Marlon, who are going to talk for a few minutes about a guide that was published a couple of years ago, specifically about providing legal services remotely, and some of the other have other comments on providing services remotely. Sarah, Marlon?
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. I will start us off. So as we mentioned before, New Perimeter is the nonprofit affiliate of DLA Piper, which is a global law firm, which is focused on delivering pro bono projects in underserved regions. Around the start of the pandemic back in 2020, we were approached by the Open Society Justice Initiative and the Legal Empowerment Network, a global network convened by Namati, where Marlon works, to research and draft a guide for legal services providers, particularly those operating in rural areas, on transitioning their work to a remote format. Now, if you can remember back to the early days of the pandemic, which in some ways seems like a lifetime ago, at one point in time, you may not have heard of the term Zoom. We all thought that working from home was a temporary situation, And the idea that we were going to have to completely transition our work and connect with clients solely online was daunting and intimidating. So we wanted to provide a practical resource that would provide information on available technologies, as well as guidance on best practices for using them. The resulting guide is called Providing Legal Services Remotely, a guide to available technologies and best practices. And there's a link here, and we can also include it in the chat. It was published in January 2021 and has been translated into French, Spanish, and Ukrainian. The guide contains sections on technologies and platforms available for remote work, including case management technologies, and the use of hotlines, online workshops, and clinics. It also covers confidentiality and proper handling of documents and addresses remote access to courts and government agencies. It also contains case studies of several legal services providers, including some of whom you will hear from today. Since the guide's publication, it has been downloaded around 750 times. We are in the process of updating the guide, in particular, revisiting and adding to the case studies of legal services providers who are innovating in their use of remote technologies. And I'll turn it over to Marlon to add some information.
Thank you, Sarah. When we did a guide, we featured a few best practices in using technology at that time, and Yevgen's organization LDN is one of those. But just to give a brief description of the range of best practices that we have seen at the start when we were preparing the guide. One is through SMS, and I'm sure that many of you are familiar with having communications simply through text messages using an ordinary phone. At the start of the pandemic, that became very useful for communicating with partner communities, with partner paralegals, or even with government agencies. I remember one network member in Indonesia, ELBHI, was saying they're even conducting their campaigns, their advocacy campaigns through SMS, through texting. They're texting their government officials. They're texting the members of their parliament, asking them to do certain actions on policies. So one is SMS. Second would be the hotlines, and this is through the use of the either landlines or cell phones. So instead of text messages, they are making available their landlines or telephones to receive calls, to receive actual calls, not just text, but to receive calls and to provide information, to provide legal advice. Third is through an online platforms. And SAY's former organization, the Ateneo Human Rights Center, started a legal aid program, an online legal aid program. They receive questions through their platform, and then lawyers and law students are monitoring the questions and responding to them. And many of those questions during that time when they launched the online legal aid program, the questions were about pandemic restrictions or restrictions of government regulations, about curfew, about where they can find some support, financial support. So all those were related to the pandemic, but it expanded to other things. It expanded to other issues. Another example that we featured is an NGO based in Ecuador, in Latin America, They had a hotline. They called it the Línea Verde, or the Green Line, prior to the pandemic. But Ecolex, the organization, said prior to the pandemic, they were receiving very few calls, and the calls that they were receiving were about environmental justice issues. But when the pandemic happened, they said there's a big spike. There's a big increase in the number of questions that they're receiving through their hotline, the Línea Verde, and the questions are no longer limited to environmental justice issues. It expanded the scope. So that's another example of hotline. Yevgen's example, and I will not preempt Yevgen's presentation, is a website-based platform, a website-based online legal assistance system, and I will let Yevgen do that. So there are a number of different uses that we have learned to do. We were forced to do because of the pandemic, because of the inability to have in-person activities. And after 2 years, we are seeing more and more uses of technology, including having online programs, education programs. There are platforms called LMS, or Learning Management Systems, that some NGOs, including us, are experimenting now. We are using an LMS to start online courses, and we are seeing that that even after the pandemic, we have seen the usefulness of technology-based activities, technology-based platforms that we can use together with in-person activities. Even while we can do in-person activities, we can still continue with our online activities. One last item that I want to share. We conducted a survey early this year, April, March, just to get the feedback of those who downloaded the guide, and we got very good feedback from those who responded, saying that they have used the guide. The guide had been useful. But one thing that I want to emphasize: we're also on the lookout for best practices for programs that are using technology enabled platforms. And through that survey, we get to know the program of Women's Business Hub, and I will let Michael talk about that. So this is a call. Just to end the sharing, I will just want to reiterate: we want to learn from you. So if you have programs, if you have started programs using online technology to provide legal services, please let us know, and we would be willing to share that with others, and we would be creating venues like this session to share more information about how we can continue providing legal services remotely. Thank you. Back to you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. And that's exactly right. I mean, the more we learn from each other, the better we are at serving our clients and coming up with new ideas, which is really the point of the next main presentation, I think, of this session, is to hear from Yevgen, Say, and Michael about what they've been doing and their programs. And as Marlon and Sarah pointed out, Yevgen and his the group that he works with, the Legal Development Network, were originally profiled in the guide. This was before the conflict started in Ukraine, and we are very honored to have Yevgen on today. Thank you for taking time. I know it's a very busy time for you, and there's a lot going on in your country, and we look forward to hearing from you. So I will turn it over to Yevgen, and we look forward to hearing from you about what you have been up to. And we have your slides pulled up. Perfect.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, dear colleagues, for this opportunity to share the experience of my colleagues working in Ukraine and providing legal services remotely amidst the war. Before 24th February this year, 2022, the 22 member organizations of our Legal Development Network were engaged in traditional legal empowerment work. They provided Ukrainians with basic legal information helping them resolve disputes, developing local leadership, and cooperating with local government to tackle justice problems. Then Russia invaded Ukraine. Institutions, including justice institutions, struggled to absorb the shock and continue their operations. LDN's members found themselves under challenge at the same time as the number of justice problems experienced by our clients mushroomed. Although Ukraine had effectively been at war with Russia since led the annexation of Crimea in 2014, a full-scale invasion of our country brought with it multiple new justice problems, forcing groups like ours to adapt and to expand our services quickly, even while under tremendous stress and while our staff was facing physical danger. Many of us displaced themselves. LDN members are providing a range of humanitarian support, including essential legal services. Ukrainians come to LDN with urgent justice problems and questions such as, can I leave the country if I have lost my passport? Or can I receive my pension if I'm a displaced person? Can I be fired from my job under martial law? Or how can I pay back my loans as a small business owner from abroad? Or where can I get help to rebuild my damaged house? And many, many other issues and questions. And in this horror of invasion, remote tools for providing legal services were almost the only opportunity for our lawyers to help people, especially to those in occupied territories. So how we responded to these challenges? Please switch the next slide. As already Marlon mentioned, our live chat platform for providing free legal assistance was launched long before the war and long before the pandemic. It was started in 2017. And this platform, in this situation, unlike our colleagues from government legal aid scheme and other civil society organizations who had to adapt to new threats and shocks, thanks to this online platform, we never stopped providing consultations to Ukrainians. This live chat is available every day without a break. Users may submit their questions on our website through a dedicated chat box, and the pool of over 15 lawyers from our member organizations respond to the questions and engage in a live conversation with the user every day. As I mentioned, without a break, 7 days per week during normal business hours. LDN member organizations are scheduled on specific days to provide support for the live chat, typically involving one lawyer answering up to 20 questions per day. If the case requires follow-up, the lawyer will send individual information for a personal consultation with one of our legal aid offices. Sorry. For 6 months of this year, 2022, LDN provided legal assistance to more than 5,000 Ukrainians by remote tools, including live chat, phone, and video conferencing. Next slide, please. During the war, we also created a web platform for obtaining legal advice for Ukrainians who are abroad. According to official statistics, more than 6 million Ukrainians went abroad to escape the war. And many of them need clarification on specifics of legal framework of the countries in which they are located at the moment. This platform, you can see the link on it, pravoman.com/standwithukraine, was launched in collaboration with our partner organization, Legal Innovations NGO, or LINGO. And this platform provides 3 options for legal assistance. First one, reference guides. Second, chatbot. And the third, it's possibility to connect with lawyers or in Ukraine through our live chat I mentioned earlier, or referral to local lawyers in the country of stay of the applicant. And since launching this platform in June, more than 16,000 users have benefited from its services. And next slide, please. A few words about lessons learned on these activities. We believe that access to justice is impossible without access to legal aid. But our resources will never be enough to reach all who need this help. So we decided to take advantage of technological opportunities and created a virtual legal office. And we recommend the organizations hoping to implement similar services ensure that they have a large pool of partner organizations and lawyers willing to assist. Organizations should also coordinate with technical specialists to help with technical aspects of such kinds of platforms, such as making shift schedules, notifying lawyer volunteers, updating reference guides, and ensuring that any backlogs are cleared. And for sure, the very important point is data protection. This is especially important when you work with the information from those in the occupied territories. Therefore, we mostly try to focus on general humanitarian topics without asking these clients for sensitive information. If it is possible to help an individual without, if it is impossible to help the individual without this information, we recommend using messengers with enhanced encryptions, such as Signal or Threema. And next slide, please. You can find our context, maybe for follow-up questions. And I will finish at this point and will be happy and glad to answer any following questions. Thank you. Passing the word to Andrew.
Thank you, Yevgen. That's really interesting. And I would ask anyone who's listening in, again, we're going to do some questions for all 3 of the panelists at the end. But if you have questions now, having just heard that, please go ahead and put them in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and start keeping track of those and try to have them answer when we get to that point in the program. So let me pass this on to Say, and who's going to talk to us about the work she's doing at Twitter and some of the opportunities that offers to those of us providing legal services remotely.
Hi, good morning. Allow me to share my screen. Okay, hold on. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, so good morning, everyone. Hello, fellow speakers, participants, and organizers of this conference. Thank you for this opportunity to represent Twitter in this prestigious event. I remember being invited to speak in the first virtual pro bono conference last 2020, and there I talked about my work in providing legal pro bono services virtually. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm now here at Twitter, and we will share about our philanthropic work, why Twitter for nonprofits, our initiatives with nonprofits, and how you can maximize the use of Twitter for your nonprofit work. So I've tailor-fitted the discussion for this conference. Okay, I've already introduced myself. You may contact me at say_Salvador on Twitter. It is definitely a privilege for me to be able to talk to you here today about a topic that is close to my heart as a lawyer and a public policy professional. So in this call with me, we also have Lynn Ampolpitayanan, our head of public policy and philanthropy in Southeast Asia. Okay, so I know that you're all familiar with Twitter, but allow me to introduce Twitter in our own words. Why Twitter? So you can have an idea on how to maximize your presence on Twitter. And allow me to zero in on our work via Twitter for good. In particular, I will talk about our work on the open internet and freedom of expression. And lastly, I want to share some very basic and useful tips for nonprofits, particularly as you embark on reaching more access to people as you do your pro bono work. So please be patient with me as I will present for the next 10 to under 15 minutes. Okay. So we believe that Twitter is the best place and the window to what's happening anywhere in the world. Just think of this. Every 2 days, there are 1 billion tweets generated and 82% of our users are outside the United States. So our mission as a company and a communication service is to serve the public conversation. And Twitter is committed to fighting for an open internet to give everyone the power to create and share ideas and information without any barriers. Okay, so at Twitter, we are guided by our principles. This is something as a lawyer myself and previously in the legal aid space, I can definitely relate to. And our principles are rooted in the belief that free and healthy public discourse helps society progress, that there should be transparency, accountability, and trust. And through Twitter for Good, which is our philanthropic arm, we exercise the belief that the business thrives only by helping society progress. And all of this is underpinned and guided by the open internet. That is, that the internet is global, available to all, and built on open standards and the protection of human rights. So if you want to know more about Twitter's open internet narrative, you may read about it on our website. Okay, so now before I delve deeper into my presentation, you may be wondering why I talk about Twitter's principles, the open internet, and working with nonprofits. So that is because at Twitter, the team that I belong to, which is a very small but lean team, but very hardworking, if I may say so myself, is often the first point of contact of nonprofit organizations. And we work with different stakeholders to take our principles into action. And our team sits at the crossroads of working with governments, with nonprofit organizations, and academia all over the world. Now, why do we do this? This is to ensure that Twitter remains a place for healthy conversations. So very briefly, our team, the public policy team, covers 3 fronts. So at policy, this is where we deal with the law and policy that relates to the internet and social media. And at Twitter Gov, this is where we highlight the health of civic conversation, particularly in the context of elections and other government initiatives globally. Now, we do this to ensure that Twitter is the best, the most authentic, and the most compelling service for government elections, and civic engagements. And lastly, I've mentioned about this, Twitter for Good. This is as part of Twitter's philanthropic effort. We work closely with nonprofits to provide training, verification, and ads for goods in 4 main pillars. And these pillars are on freedom of expression, these are on internet safety, equality, and the last is on natural disaster and crisis response. So now let's talk about Twitter for nonprofits. So why do people come to Twitter and what makes it unique? Now, why should nonprofits, in extending their reach, care about being on Twitter? So Twitter is all about the people and the conversations that they have. The audience on Twitter is influential and they come to our service to see what's happening in the world and in their communities, to follow their interests and to join in on the conversations. So here's a very quick snapshot of what's happening on Twitter. There are over 211 million who log in thereabouts, and then this equates to billions of impressions. Now, because Twitter is public, its tweets are embedded in news articles and flashed on TV for millions of people to see outside of Twitter, for literally the whole world to see. And people who are very active on Twitter can be incredibly influential, and they have a large impact in their social spheres. And also, here are the key demographics on Twitter. We have various age groups, and you can see that the majority come from the first two age groups, the 16 to 24, 25 to 34, but significantly, they're also 45 and above. And one interesting thing to note is that 35% of our users tend to be affluent consumers versus non-users. So for nonprofits, this can translate to people having the means to donate. So let's now talk about the Twitter for Good. I've mentioned Twitter for Good, and allow me to delve deeper into our work with nonprofits. Now, this way, with the activities or other activities that other nonprofits have done on Twitter, you can have an idea on how you can replicate the same or take inspiration for your organization. So we use the power of Twitter to strengthen communities through our service, our people, and profits. Now, as mentioned earlier, we have 4 major areas of focus. For today's purpose, I want to highlight the 3, which is on internet safety and education, freedom of speech, civil liberties, and of course, on equality. And I personally have worked on these areas from my previous work as a lawyer for a nonprofit organization, and also in particular now that I'm on Twitter. So on internet safety and education, here's where we help people understand healthy digital habits and online safety. We work with various organizations to tackle issues such as bullying, abuse, and hate speech, among others. Now, on free speech, we respect all voices. That's why we promote free expression and defend civil liberties. Now, on equality, we support the universal acceptance for all people and work to ensure that, of course, we contribute meaningfully to the promotion of equal opportunities. On the key areas I mentioned, internet safety, education, free expression, and civil liberties, as well as equality, here are some of the work the nonprofits from across Southeast Asia have showcased on Twitter. Now, to bring awareness to their advocacies, they brought it to Twitter and creatively made use of Twitter. For example, they used Twitter moments and spaces. They likewise actively tweeted and crafted their own voice, their particular style on Twitter to engage with their audience. Now, you've seen here an example by Arus Pelangi on the Twitter Spaces. For an organization such as them, the Spaces conversation generated about more than 500 unique listeners. And for this kind of organization, that is already like a very broad reach. Okay, now I previously mentioned that our principles are underpinned and guided by the open internet. And we are in a difficult period for free expression, and that is why at Twitter, we double down on our efforts. We not only seek to be welcoming, inclusive, and as safe as we can, but we're also working to protect a global, free, secure, and open internet. Now, in the face of numerous regulations worldwide, we cannot afford to take the open internet for granted. And numerous challenges definitely demand a coordinated, multi-stakeholder approach. And this includes civil society, governments, and industry perspectives. So our work, particularly with nonprofits, engaging with them so that they know how to navigate Twitter as they do their work, supporting them and working alongside them. Hopefully, all of this contributes to ensuring the survival of a global, free, secure, and open internet. Now, I want to talk about the hashtag #ThereIsHelp, particularly on freedom of expression. So here at Twitter, we want to help provide more access to information, and we recognize that access to a free and an open internet and collaboration should involve the public and private communities. So underpinned and guided by our work on the open internet, we definitely understand that freedom of expression is important. As our mission is to serve the public conversation, and since freedom of expression and access to a free and open internet are fundamental human rights, we have launched a hashtag #ThereIsHelp search prompt as an important step in helping voices that are at risk access services that are available. So what we did is we collaborated with partners to enable those in need to access information, important information and resources when and where they need it the most. For example, if you're a user in the Philippines and you type something on the search bar related to freedom of expression, say you have a question about freedom of expression or you need legal assistance, the notification from the search will lead you to the website and contact information of the Commission on Human Rights, IDLs, which is a nonprofit organization that provides pro bono services, and the National Union of Journalists in the Philippines, which has the relevant information on freedom of expression. So we have launched this prompt in Southeast Asia, particularly in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, with various nonprofit organizations, such as Thai Lawyers for Human Rights, ILO, and the Lawyers Council under the royal patronage. So in Indonesia, we've worked with their Komnas HAM, their National Human Rights Institute, LBH Jakarta, and SafeNet. And also for Malaysia, our partners are CIJ Malaysia, Lawyers for Liberty, and Suhakam. Now, we have helped raise awareness of their work, starting by giving training on how to maximize the use of Twitter for their work. Specifically for freedom of expression, we conducted the Spaces conversation to share about the search prompt and their work on defending the freedom of expression. So for these Spaces conversations, this generated also above 500 unique listeners. And for these organizations, again, this is already a very significant reach. Okay, lastly, just a very, very, very basic tips for nonprofits. So we shared what we actively do on Twitter in the hopes that these two may inspire your work. And now for the next part of my presentation, briefly, I'll go over how you can maximize your use of Twitter. You can think of these as you work to reach out to your audience and the people that you serve through your pro bono work. So your profile is typically the first thing that people see on Twitter. Very, very basic, but think of it as your first impression. How do you want people to feel when they meet you? What do you want to convey? So here are key things that you want to impart to them. And you have to think of all of these information into consideration. So put in the relevant information on your profile. So I gave an example of the Asia Pro Bono Conference. There. Your bio also is very important because it helps solidify your mission and tells people who you are. So you can keep it fresh by adding information about upcoming events or campaigns. So you can express your brand and your values, you can promote your campaign, and you can tell your followers what to expect coming from you. You can actually also identify yourself as a non-governmental and a non-profit organization. So you just go into settings and then the non-governmental and non-profit organization will appear in this tab. And then I'm almost done, but I want to share this. So because Twitter is about sharing your advocacy, you have to find your voice. You have to find the one that suits you. Do you want to be serious? Do you want to be playful? Do you want to be very engaging with your followers? Now, the tone and voice of your tweet will definitely identify who you are on Twitter, and we've seen best cases of this. Now, allow me to share this quote. Now, voice is the most critical aspect of defining your brand identity, who you are, because it serves as a framework for your social content. As I mentioned earlier, we are now, like social media is part and parcel of our work. So you also have to think about it, how you want to project yourself. And now your brand voice on Twitter, even if it's as a nonprofit, it also helps build your social identity and allows people to connect with you. Now you have to know who you are and how you communicate, and have a voice that allows you to speak seamlessly. Now, even if it's, like on social media, you have to remember to talk like a human, connect with the culture, and join conversations. Remember that when engaging in a place like Twitter, we always tell our partners that there are very many different voices there. So it's very important to distinguish who you are on the service. Now, last message, very, very basic, but I want you to remember this. Tweet simply, tweet simple, keep it brief, connect, copy, and creative content so you can be creative with your images, and you focus on your message because people want to focus on the message when they're on Twitter. And lastly, to incorporate the relevant hashtags to amplify your message. So with that, Thank you very much. I hope you learned something from my presentation.
Great, Say. Thank you. That's really, really informative. Thanks. Oh, Bruce is doing the around the the claps around. Great. So again, people who are participating, if you have, we have some questions and we're keeping track. I know that there are people who would like to actually talk about some of the things they're doing, and we will have time to get to that when we're through with these presentations. But if there are any questions for Say in the meantime, please put them in the chat. And again, we'll keep track of those and cover them in a few minutes. So now I'd like to turn this over to Michael Odongo, who, as Marlon stated, as we were doing some impact assessment on the guide, we did a survey, and Michael was one of the survey respondents who talked about accessing the guide and using the guide in his practice and building on some of his programs using the ideas that came out of the guide. So that is how we were able to connect with Michael. And again, I think that's a great example of the partnerships that we have and how we can, how we meet each other through the work we do and programs like this, like the Asia Pro Bono Conference. Michael, please tell us about Women's Business Hub.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, for this time again. I think my presentation is going to come from now the end user of the guide. It's just like you have been working in a recipe and now you are waiting to get from the person who have eaten your food. How was it? And I can tell you that the guide is an eye-opener, and even to those people who are in the sector of championing civil rights and any other work which relate with remote engagement. I think the guide can really provide a pathway of how these things can be done. I will just share some of the lessons that we learned first, and then I will go to how we applied the guide to acquire these lessons. And number one, which came out to us very strongly, we realized that the use of the guide and using the technological platforms that the guide was sharing has really worked out in harmonizing dynamics. Because the dynamics, we have socio-economical dynamics, we have socio-cultural and even religious dynamics when people are coming out to seek legal redress and even access to justice. And the guide has really harmonized that. What do I mean by socio-economic? You find there are sometimes constraints, financial constraints for the people who are really seeking legal redress, and this has really been reduced to the point that they can access all those things even from the comfort of their homes. There are also social cultural issues. We are a global population, and each community have their own cultural way of responding to some of these matters, especially when it comes to issues of key genders like women, men. The way the society responds to some of their matters is very diverse. And through the use of the guide, we found when this is highly being harmonized, because there are some people, like in our country, the issue of women's rights to property like land is a very emotive issue. And sometimes when they see you even going out aggressively to seek legal redress, it can even make you a victim of people attacking you and even killing you, especially there are women who have been killed and when they are trying to seek for their rightful ownership over property. And when they are using this remotely, it is kind of providing a conducive environment where nobody will know what is going on until you get what is rightfully yours. Then it has also helped in demystifying some of the myths and misconceptions which people have always seen with the issues of access to justice. They always think that maybe for you to access legal services or for you to access justice, you must have money, you must have influence or bigger connection, you must have a big father somewhere. And this has really helped the people who are marginalized, the poor, those who are at the remote areas, that they too can just access this service as any other person. Another thing that we learned that this guide has helped is saving time and resources. We realize this even from the expert side, like people who are saying that they are offering pro bono services, people like lawyers. You find somebody is coming to you where they know they have a problem which is supposed to be addressed. They know their right is being affected, but they don't know how. So you'll find it takes much time for the lawyer to educate this person, to take all those processes up to the point of offering a pro bono service. The time of this lawyer has already been consumed, and it has been making some lawyers to shy away offering pro bono services because pro bono services was becoming very expensive rather than just going to offer the legal service at a fee. So when we started using this guide, we realized that it is also saving much time and resources even to the lawyers who are coming to offer this, because when we are reaching to that lawyer, everything has been spelled out, a lot of things have been addressed, and then they go to the actual work of responding to this. The guide also helped in community engagement and also stakeholder engagement, because we realized that for a matter to be addressed, it is not only a one-person show. You find there are other stakeholders who are supposed to be involved in providing all the necessary document and all the necessary information for the litigation to take place and for justice to be accessed. And we realized that through using this guide, it was very cost effective and it allows people to interact much easily and very fast. And at the end, you find many people have been engaged within the shortest time to provide a service, which in the other word, when there were no these platforms, you find the person who is seeking for these services will take years even to access justice. So, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that helped us is that access to justice is a journey. It is not an instant coffee. It is a journey, and this journey requires education. This journey requires accessing the right place to take your issue and be addressed, whereby you don't even waste people's time. And it acquires somebody who can walk with you through that journey. And we realize that sometimes people do give up, not because they are comfortable with the situation, but because there is no one to hold their hand, because they don't know which door, which place do I take this information, and how do I respond back? If you walk to 3-4 places and the answer is no, they always come back and say, okay, I don't know, because the person you are also asking doesn't know how they can help you. And when we are using this, it has developed kind of a one-stop shop for marginalized people, for communities to know how can I get all this in one way or the other. So we realized with the guide, and the reason why we are happy about the guide is that when we are doing this, it helped us to understand that there are 3 elements which the guide has always helped us. And for us, somebody to access justice, there is a basic requirement where this person has to do. You have to get your information right. You have to get all the documents that are required. You have to put everything to help that person providing litigation or providing assistance or providing pro bono service to know how they can help you within the shortest time possible. And then there is also the common practice, like with access to justice, you can't just go verbal. You have to, file documents. You have to put everything in place for the experts who are going to look at this, see how you can be assisted. And then there is the actual activity of now providing the technical service. So when we were doing this, the time we got the guide, we had a program where we were looking at widows who have lost their spouses, and the succession property taxation purpose of accessing their land was a problem, because again, you'll find they had to work on the land and they can't do a lot of things. So when we were looking at the socioeconomic empowerment of women, we were looking at it. The first important thing is how they can access their land. And then it is tedious in Kenya. Like when you start looking at these processes, you can walk to so many offices and get very many conflicting information. And paralegals are also stuck. They don't know how to help you. It is very expensive to this poor woman to use transport each and every single day, carrying herself and also the paralegal, because the paralegals are also not paid. You go to a pro bono lawyer and they're like, yes, I'm going to give you the technical service, but you have to get all those things by yourself because I don't have money to do all that. So when we were using the guide, it helped the woman to prepare at the grassroots to know what are these basic requirements before I even start working out. And through the paralegals, they were being told, you can access this, you can get this, a lawyer can give you, get this, if you want to start that process, get this, get that information, get this document right, and that basic requirement was helping women to save time and energy and resources of moving towards accessing justice. Then now it was easier for them because through learning and sharing among themselves, now when they go to common practice of now filing these cases, going to the right office, they knew that when I go, and it was also bringing confidence in the life of these people, because you go to the right place, you say, and they say, yes, you're in the right place, and the time is saved. Lastly, when we did a small project, which was supported by Urgent Action Fund as a donor, of helping women to access title deeds, it happened that that was the time that COVID was also all over, and people couldn't walk, people couldn't go to meeting places like court and everything. And what happened with us was very interesting. When we shared with the legal system, because we also work closely with the Office of Attorney General, and that was the time that they were also realizing that they can use online engagement like Google Meet or Zoom, even to continue doing the services. We had 1,500 women with cases. And after doing all those processes I've mentioned, we zeroed down to 111 women who had a common case, which was now treated as a public interest litigation. And it took only like a week. And when the judgment was being delivered, imagine the magistrate who was looking at these cases after looking at all these gave a 30 minutes judgment to 111 women with cases. And imagine if she was supposed to deliver one by one, it would have taken months. So we saw the power of technology and how this thing is remotely. And for our excitement that these women never traveled to courts. They sat in a public place. We had some smaller instruments like a television set. We have an internet, and it was connected, and the magistrate could see them, and they could see the magistrate, and the lawyer who was helping was also in his office because they couldn't go to court because of limitation of numbers. And when that ruling was done, the women were now just going to court to get the letter for starting their process. So ladies and gentlemen, from our point, we have realized that providing services remotely is very practical, it is cost effective, it is time managing, and it is something that can even save the households who are struggling with poverty not to use a lot of resources when they are accessing justice. Finally, as I mentioned in Women Business Hub, we work not only with women, but we work also with the minorities. These are the lesbians, the gays, and the transgendered. And we realize that this platform or the guide is not only restricted to access to justice. We have realized that it can be used to traverse even to people who can offer psychosocial support, people who can offer mentorship and everything, and even lessons. And we realize that it is building a new communities, creating new friendship, and also helping these people to learn a lot. Finally, there are things which will always have limitations and challenges. And one of the limitations that we have realized, and we would love to share with the people who are also friends of such initiatives who can support, that there is a need of creating more awareness of how to navigate through the technical platform, like what my immediate presenter was talking about. What do you put in a platform, a social platform? How do you go about this? That knowledge is still missing. We have the resources, but we have to beef it up by providing adequate capacity so that the people who are supposed to get these services can also be in a position of doing them in an easy way. Thank you.
That's great, Michael. Thank you. I mean, one of the things you talked about was the court system that you've worked through, and that many of the courts, or some of the courts that you were previously needing to go to in person, are working remotely as well. And that's another thing I think we've seen globally. I know I've seen it in the United States. I know from talking to Bruce Lasky, he's seen it in Thailand, that many courts who were forced to go online and do hearings remotely, like we're doing now through a Zoom type setting, are going to continue that practice, because they can cover more cases, they can be more efficient, and they can make their dockets less full. So I think that's something we can all definitely anticipate, is that courts will continue to use this type of system to have court appearances, as opposed to making people always come in and be present. So we have received some chats. If there are questions specifically for Yevgen, Say, or Michael, continue to send them, and there's a few I will ask them. But before we do that, we did have a comment from Lachana, who commented in the chat about the online legal consultation service in Lao PDR. And Lachana, if you're available, could you unmute yourself and tell us about that program?
And we just want to remind everyone to use the interpretation function on Zoom.
Thank you. So, Lakshana, are you on, and would you like to talk about the online legal consultation service? Maybe someone can internally chat and see if that's...
อันรจนาได้มีคำถามทางแชทเจ้าอันนั้นส่วนหนึ่งก็ได้ถามไปแล้วเนาะแต่ว่าในสปลาวเฮานี่กำลังมีการบริการการเสนอด้านกฎหมายทางเว็บไซต์เนาะฉะนั้นแหละของพวกเฮาก็มีหลายสิ่งท้าทายอยู่เนาะอันที่หนึ่งมันเว้าเรื่องการตอบสนองทางด้านอิเล็กทรอนิกส์เนาะโดยเฉพาะแม่นสัญญาณ Wi-Fi หรือว่าเกี่ยวกับอินเทอร์เน็ตสัญญาณอินเทอร์เน็ตเฮานั่นแหละเนาะที่ยังบ่ทันได้ตอบสนองเท่าที่ควรเทื่ออันนั้นอันที่หนึ่งสิ่งท้าทายของพวกเฮาเนาะและสิ่งท้าทายของพวกอีกอย่างหนึ่งก็คือพนักงานที่จะให้บริการผ่านทางเขาเอิ้นว่าทางเว็บไซต์เนาะคือการให้คำปรึกษาผ่านแชทบ็อกหรือว่าผ่านการแชทของผู้ที่ก็จะเสนอขอการช่วยเหลือพนักงานเฮาก็ยังบ่มี เขาความชำนาญในการที่จะนำใช้อิเล็กทรอนิกส์การใช้คอมพิวเตอร์เนาะอันนี้ก็คือสิ่งท้าทายหนึ่งและอันที่สองมาหันสิ่งท้าทายของพวกเขาต่อมาหันละแม่นนั่นนะก็เอิ้นว่านะมันยังบ่มีการต่อเนื่องเนาะในเรื่องของการที่จะบริการให้มันได้อย่างทั่วถึงของผู้ที่มาใช้บริการทางด้านกฎหมายทั้งเนาะแหละแล้วพวกเขาแหละคิดว่าเนาะอยู่ในนี้พวกเขาอยากแลกเปลี่ยนกับทางเชี่ยวชาญซึ่งบทเรียนของท่านได้เสนอมาเป็นอันที่ดีเนาะและแต่ว่าพวกเขาก็ต้องได้มีการนำมาใช้นำมาหมุนใช้อันไหนที่ใช้ได้หั่นเนาะแต่อยากแลกเปลี่ยนกับทางเชี่ยวชาญหั่นว่าท่านควรจะแนะนำในใดๆต่อสปลาวเฮาโดยเฉพาะแม่นการบริการผ่านทางเว็บไซต์การช่วยเหลือด้านกฎหมายที่พวกเขามีอยู่นี้เนาะและการจดแต้มบันทึกเด้เป็นแนวใดเนาะเพราะว่าของพวกเขานี่มีแล้วเรื่องเว็บไซต์การช่วยเหลือด้านกฎหมายแต่พวกเขายังบ่มีการต่อเนื่องอยู่ในการที่จะใช้พนักงานเฮามีจำนวนจำกัดอันนั้นก็คือสิ่งท้าทายอีกอันหนึ่งอีกเนาะก็สิมีแต่อยากให้ทางเชี่ยวชาญเพิ่นให้คำแนะนำตื่มเพื่อให้พวกเขาสามารถขับเคลื่อนได้อย่างเป็นปกติหั่นพวกเขามีจำนวนพนักงานที่ใช้ให้บริการผ่านทางช่องทางออนไลน์นี่แม่นจำกัดหลายเจ้าแล้วก็อันอื่นๆที่ได้ตอบที่ได้เขียนลงในแชทบอกค่ะเนาะเลยเจ้าขอบใจหลายๆ
Thank you. Do any of the panelists want to take that? I think the issue is really finding the proper staffing when you're working online to make sure that if you're putting something online that you have people who well, Yevgen, thank you. Why don't you go ahead and address the question?
Yeah, in Ukrainian context, it's really difficult to imagine the total absence or lack of internet connection. As our colleague mentioned, I have to say that even in the areas with active hostilities in Ukraine, there very often is stable internet connection. Surprising, but it's so. For when you lack in connection, I can recommend to look into the possibilities of phone providing by phone legal consultations hotlines featured by the way in the guide very in detail. And in terms of skills of staff, I have to emphasize that it's very important to invest in education of your staff, in technical support of your staff. So in our case, we created a number of guides for our lawyers who provide legal aid through our live chat box, how to use this tool, how to use example of answers, how to shift inquiries for consideration of the colleagues, how to understand when you have your duty to switch in the conversation. So many different technical issues, and we did invest time and resources in educating our staff in these terms. And as I mentioned, it's very important that lawyers will be supported with technical specialists, because a lot of technical issues requires attention of the technical specialists to fix some issues which happens very often during the providing legal aid remotely. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really helpful, and an interesting comment about how we're not only now being required to provide legal services and legal advice, but to really to help our clients, we really need to understand technical issues or have people around us who can help and explain that as well. Michael, you're in quite a remote area, obviously, and so that the issue is, many of the people I'm sure that you represent or who come to Women's Business Hub do not have technical expertise. How do you address that issue? Do you teach them? Do you have people who teach them? Do you have resources? How is it that you get people comfortable with using technology?
Thank you so much. Yes, that is a very critical issue that as people move forward, as we want to see this initiative create more impact, there is a need of really designing even the trainings that can be given to community resource persons. Here in Kenya, we call them community resource persons. And within the community resource persons, we have people who have been trained in different sectors who can really work so well. And like in this case of access to justice, I can talk about paralegals. And one thing that we have to do is to utilize paralegals, people who are at the grassroots. And again, I can say in terms of human resource, if we really think outside the box, then it can be very effective because many young people are embracing technology. And in the global arena, you'll find the higher population are young people who are really embracing technology. What they require is customized knowledge and information of how to use these technologies so well. Like what we have been doing as Women Business Hub, with us, we just don't rush to pro bono lawyers to provide this. We serve like paramedics. Like, even in the health sector, you have people before somebody reach to the final surgeon. There are many people who did their part in this, and I think if program can be designed in how community people can be trained and how the tool can be used and consolidate all this information, then it can be very effective because you don't need to have people consolidated in one building like staff. People can work remotely. We have phones. So if somebody knows that this is what I'm supposed to do at my community, that person will help people around them. So I think that is the easiest way of making sure that everybody has knowledge of how to do this and how to get this. And it will be like, moving to the ladders. When you have from this place, you go to this person and this person can respond to something and you go to the next person. Thank you.
Thank you. Pa, did I see that you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you to all the presenters. This was very, very thrilled to hear from the different perspective and the different things that you have been doing. I will say, as VAPSICO, we have provide technical support with the different clinical legal education program in different law institute. And I think this is very useful to hear from you all, how can they overcome the challenge. So basically, these critical programs at the Faculty of Law and Political Science, National University of Laos in Vientiane, and also Faculty of Law and Political Science, Champasak University down in the south, they're actually like legal service providers as the students there and teachers. So they have this Facebook fan page. And as you can imagine that a lot of communities, like, they're like, sometimes they have, when they have questions, they drop into the Facebook page inbox, and also they have this WhatsApp. They've been using this WhatsApp for the clinic, the center itself, the in-house consultation clinic. So also the challenge, sometimes the challenges is that they get message all the time, and how do you deal with this? And like or like, of course, if there's a complicated issue, there will, like, you need to be we do some research and stuff at basic information they can provide. But again, sometimes, because it's late at night, but we try to don't, try to have them like be more, be as much as, I'll say, before answering something, needs to be aware that your answer is very firm and secure, correct before doing that. So maybe any of you can share how you deal with this, if especially communicate with the people, the clients come, or sharing through these types of remotely services. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have more to share on that topic?
Well, Andrew, I've just been thinking, like when the world is going digital, you find people can nowadays do a lot of things with their phone. If I want to do shopping online, I just go and get an app and of that platform, and I can order anything, and the services can be available. I think the same can be applied in access to justice. Like there's a way that it can be thought of and see, because even if you go to people who are doing legal profession, there are people who are like, they are criminal lawyers, there are those who are dealing with civil cases, there are people who are dealing with family matters, there are people who are dealing with property matters, business issues. And if somebody can just go and scroll, and then you go and get that an app and click and scroll through and see, okay, I have a problem with property issue, then who can I look at here? And then what are the prices of these people? And that such kind of systems can really work, because through that, we have seen them happening in other places where people can do a lot of things online. And I think that is where initiatives like this one can also incorporate program designers, people who can come up with apps, people who can come up with usable applications that can be downloaded. And then when you download it, you activate it, and then you can start accessing these services at your comfort place. And that can be narrowed to the point where there are basics one, like if I want to get this basic information, and that can be. Then lastly, we also need to influence the education sector, where upcoming lawyers are being trained, so that they can also understand the new dynamics which are coming into place and the new knowledge, so that by the time they are coming out like legal students, they can also start, making an income out of this, genuine income, because when they have been accredited and they can offer this, instead of waiting to be employed in a law firm where sometimes does not even exist. So I think taking this to the much higher can really be very cost effective.
Great, thank you, Michael. I see we have a question coming in from, is it Campew? Is that, I apologize if I mispronounced the name, but.
You did great, Campew. Yeah.
Campew, great, thank you. And we'll take one more question, then we're gonna move on, but thank you. Please go ahead.
แลกเปลี่ยนเกี่ยวกับเรียกงานการให้คำปรึกษาในรูปแบบของอิเล็กทรอนิกส์เนาะก็คือว่าก็คือทางศูนย์ของพวกเราก็เคยเฮ็ดมีเว็บของเนาะแต่ว่าในเรื่องของผู้ที่จะมาตอบเนาะเวลาลูกความหรือว่ามีคนมาขอคำปรึกษานะผู้ที่จะมาตอบนี่ต้องแม่นทนายความบ่เพราะว่าส่วนหลายนักศึกษาเฮากับบ่กล้าที่จะตอบให้บ่กล้าที่จะให้คำปรึกษากับเจ้าเพื่อกับย่านแน่ว่าให้ไปแล้วย่านมันบ่ถูกจังซี่เนาะก็อยากขอแลกเปลี่ยนว่าทาง ประเทศของทานได้มีวิธีการแนวใดที่จะให้คำปรึกษาในรูปแบบอิเล็กทรอนิกส์ที่ว่ามีลูกความเข้ามาขอทางออนไลน์ล่ะแม่นผู้ใดเนาะมีหน้าที่ในการตอบแล้วถ้าสมมุติว่าเป็นนักศึกษากฎหมายนี่ก็เจ้าสามารถตอบได้บ่แต่ที่เห็นผ่านมาเนาะก็คือเฮาก็ติดตามนักศึกษาอยู่ก็คือนักศึกษาบ่กล้าตอบเพราะว่าถ้าตอบไปแล้วย่ามันผิดก็รอท่าให้แต่ทนายความที่เพิ่นมาให้ช่วยเหลือเนาะบางเทื่อทนายความเฮาก็ฮู้ว่าทนายความนี่มีเวียกหลายเนาะบางเทื่อทนายความก็บ่มีเวลาที่จะมาตอบให้กับเจ้าจังซี่นะเนาะอันนี้ขอแลกเปลี่ยนเจ้าขอบใจ
Thank you. I mean, that's a really important question, and I think it differs from country to country and jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I will tell you from where I come from, the United States, we cannot have students directly giving legal advice. They need to be overseen by an attorney. And the same with other types of legal services providers. So the important thing is that the people are well trained, but again, and I can't speak for other countries, but in the United States, we would need to make sure that a lawyer is overseeing the work that the student or the legal service provider is doing and the advice that they are giving. I think the more important issue that you raised is, it sounds like you have people who are uncomfortable with the issues that they're being presented with and not comfortable answering the questions. And I think that's an issue of additional training. We should not be putting anyone, legal service providers, students, even attorneys for that matter, in a situation where they are not comfortable. Our ethical obligations require us to only allow people who we know are capable and comfortable giving advice to be interfacing with the client. So I think it's really more of an issue of making sure that the appropriate training is happening and that they're being overseen. So I want to recognize the time here. I mean, we could have an entire conference on this topic, and maybe someday we will. But I want to make sure we have an opportunity to hear more from some of you. So instead of doing it in this fashion, we're either going to break up into breakout rooms or maybe ask a few specific questions. So in that respect, I'm going to turn this over to Marlon and see, Marlon, have you thought about how we should handle the next few minutes before we conclude at noon?
Yeah, we have a big group, and we're happy to have more than 100 participants. But I'm thinking it will be difficult for us to break into different rooms and then have the different groups report back. So I suggest that we'll just open the discussion. We'll go through a few questions, and then we'll ask participants to share on the questions that we'll be giving, if that's okay, and that will also help us manage the remaining time that we have, and have more time at the end of the session for additional questions from the participants. Is that okay? Can you give can you give a thumbs up, virtual, or just raise your hand? Okay. So the first question that we want to ask, and we have started sharing on this, is if there is any specific program using online resources, technology, that you have tried in your work during the pandemic, or you are continuing. If you could share that, please. And if you could share lessons that you've had in implementing that online program. So we can start with that. Let's start with we've heard some participants share their programs. We want to hear additional concrete programs. So please do so.
มีความเห็นและเปลี่ยนเนาะซึ่งว่าอยู่ในตัวนี้เรียกงานตัวนี้เนาะก็คือเราแหละ ผ่านมาพวกเขาก็ได้มีการสร้างคู่มือในการนำใช้เว็บไซต์นะสำหรับตัวเราอันนั้นนี่แล้วนอกจากนั้นแล้วพวกเขาก็ยังมีเขาเอิ้นว่าฝึกอบรมให้กับผู้ที่จะให้บริการแล้วพวกเขาก็จะได้เสนอทางกฎหมายซึ่งจะให้บริการทางเว็บไซต์นี้เนาะนั่นเป็นดีไซน์ของเราเขาจะได้จัดตั้งปฏิบัติแต่พวกเขายังติดกับได้ยินเหรอหรือว่าเสียงมันจะไม่ค่อยล่ะฮัลโหลได้ยินบ้าง
เลยว่ามาอีกได้หนึ่งพอดีเสียงมันขาดไปเมื่อกี้ตอบได้ยัง
อยู่ในรัฐอยู่ในโซนโปรลาวเขานี่นะมีการสร้างเว็บไซต์เนาะแล้วพวกเขาก็ได้มีการสร้างคู่มือการนำใช้เว็บไซต์แล้วพวกเขาก็ได้มีการฝึกพนักงานรับผิดชอบเรื่องงานเป็นเหนือด้านกฎหมายโดยเฉพาะการช่องทางเว็บไซต์นี้เนาะแต่พวกเขามีจำนวนจำกัดย้อนมาเป็นระยะของการทดลองการนำใช้เว็บไซต์ตัวนี้เนาะเวลาอยู่ในการนำใช้ของพวกเขาระยะของการทดลองดังกล่าวท่านเรามันก็ยังบ่ทันได้เห็นผลอย่างชัดเจนเพื่อย้อนอันจริงกับสิเป็นประสบการณ์ของการนำใช้เครื่องมือที่พวกเขามียังบ่ทันมีความชำนาญและอันที่สองมาการที่เขาจะให้คำปรึกษาทางด้านกฎหมายผ่านช่องทางนี้พนักงานเขาก็ยังบ่ทัน
สบายดีรถวันนี้ยินเสียงสัญญาณบ่มีบ่จังรถจะนาเอ้ย
You're on mute
ยินบ่
ยินฮอดตอนพนักงานเขายังแต่เอาไม่ขอบาทนึง
เจ้าได้ยินแล้วเนาะอันนั้นเป็นระยะเป็นระยะของการทดลองนำใช้เว็บไซต์ดังกล่าวหั่นเนาะแล้วก็พวกเขามีจำนวนพนักงานก็บ่ได้หลายมันจะแล้วก็บ่ได้มีทั่วประเทศพวกเขาเพิ่งมีแต่อยู่4แขวงที่พวกเขานำใช้มีอยู่ประมาณ5โครงการนี่แหละเนาะที่พวกเขากำลังมีการทดลองนำใช้การบริการผ่านช่องทางเว็บไซต์นี้เนาะและฉะนั้นแหละบทเรียนของพวกเขาก็มีแนวนั้นแต่ว่าการบริการพวกเขาต่อเนื่องหรือยังในปัจจุบันนี้แม่นยังเถื่อยังบ่มีความต่อเนื่องเนาะแต่พวกเขาก็พยายามสร้างนิติกรรมและก็พยายามโฆษณาเผยแพร่เนาะให้กับพนักงานสายแขนงการอยู่ทางพวกเขาหรือว่าแขนงการอื่นให้มีความรับรู้ว่ามีการเปิดบริการให้คำปรึกษาด้านกฎหมายผ่านทางเว็บไซต์อันนี้คือแม่นบทเรียนของสปป.ลาวเฮาที่ได้มีการจัดตั้งปฏิบัติในผ่านมาเจ้ากาบ่แน่ใจว่าสิ่งที่ข้าพเจ้านำเสนอก็บ่ฮู้ว่าทางเชี่ยวชาญหรือว่าทางผู้เข้าร่วมเนาะบ่ว่าอยู่ลาวหรือบรรดาประเทศท่านเนาะที่เข้าร่วมกับถ้าว่ามีอันใดดีที่ว่าให้เขาจะอยากแชร์ให้ข้าพเจ้ารับรู้นำเนาะว่าอันใดมันปฏิบัติได้ดีพวกเขาก็สามารถนำมาใช้จัดตั้งปฏิบัติอยู่ในสปป.ลาวเฮานี้เนาะแล้วก็ทุกๆการเคลื่อนไหวของพวกเขาจะต้องได้อาศัยทางเขาเอิ้นว่ามีส่วนร่วมของหลายภาคส่วนอยู่เนาะเพื่อให้งานนี้มันอยู่คงที่
ฉะนั้นข้าพเจ้าขอเรียนเชิญ
ประมาณสำนักเนาะ
กลุ่มหนึ่งขึ้นมานำเสนอ
Thank you, Lochana, for sharing your program, what you're doing. And Lochana is also asking others, please share what you're doing so that we can learn from each other. So that is what we want to do for this portion of our session. Please share ways in which you have provided in your organization, in your office. You have continued to provide services remotely. Whatever you are using, whether it's SMS or a hotline or a website or any online platform that you could share, please do share it with us and let us know your experience.
Hey, Marlon, maybe can I speak a little bit? Add into what? Yep, thank you. Maybe I just add into what Lochanas from JSP, MOJ just said. I think from the Laos side, because I've been working also, we at Mexico has been supporting the Ministry of Justice. However, this platform was was supported by our development partners during DP. With that said, I think what MNGs in Laos would like to get experience from you all in this panel, in this session is that like the different kind of support that it can be provided by the legal service provider, especially the technical, the IT, that is still a challenges with them, and how maybe like how often that it can be trained, these different legal service providers. As she mentioned, this is a pilot and there's only 4 or 5 provinces that's just that, but yeah, but still there's still many challenges, and they've been trying to learn from others throughout as well to make it happen, so that people from remotely from far out, they can they're able to access the legal aid services that's provided by the Ministry of Justice throughout the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Pa. We've heard from Lao participants, from Lao. If there are other countries, if there are participants from other countries in the room, we would like to hear your story. Just unmute if you want to share. Naimi from Iran said we use different platforms: website, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Telegram.
One of the earlier questions was about how to match up if you learn that your client has a need and trying to match up with a referral attorney or someone who could handle, do that work. And so I see Laura Elliott from DLA Piper writes, Australian legal charity Justice Connect has developed an online platform that connects people seeking legal assistance with pro bono lawyers. So again, matching those seeking assistance with pro bono lawyers. It's been very successful in Australia, and Laura has included a link to that in the chat. So those who are interested in that topic should take a look at it. John Davis replied from PillNet, applied that Justice Connect is being launched in Hong Kong, and he comments that the platform's very flexible and easy to configure with other jurisdictions and languages. So it sounds like that program has been successful and is an easy one to implement. So some of you who are talking about that question about matching up those in need of legal assistance with lawyers may want to take a look at that portal. Thank you, Laura and John, for those chat comments.
Kampoy. Yes, please go ahead.
ก็ขอสบายดีและทุกท่านเนาะขอประกอบคำเห็นเกี่ยวกับบทเรียนที่แลกเปลี่ยนกันเมื่อกี้เนาะขอโทษหลายๆที่เข้าซ่าคือระยะที่ผ่านมาเนาะที่ทางพวกเราเริ่มต้นที่พวกเราได้การสนับสนุนได้รับการสนับสนุนจาก UNDP ครับพวกเราได้สร้างเว็บไซต์แล้วก็สร้างละครแล้วก็สร้างแผ่นพับเนาะหรือบูชัวที่แบบโฆษณาให้ผู้อยู่ห่างไกลซอกเล็กนั้นที่ให้เข้าถึงกระบวนการยุติธรรมโดยเฉพาะสร้างละครออกโทรภาพเนาะทุกวันเสาร์เวลา 4 โมงตอนแรงถึง 5 โมงเนาะแล้วก็เปิดสายออนไลน์พร้อมในระยะนั้นเนาะถือว่ามีประชาชนที่กระเจ้าสนใจที่โทรศัพท์เข้ามาในเวลาเขาออกอากาศคือเวลา 4 โมงแรงหา 5 โมงแรงหั่นเนาะแล้วก็มีทนายไปคอยรับโทรศัพท์ที่ว่าเขาเจ้าโทรมาตอนเวลาเขาออกอากาศนั่นก็แต่ละอาทิตย์เนาะคือวันเสาร์ทุกวันเสาร์พวกเขาไปนะก็มีประชาชนเขาเจ้าสนใจเขาเจ้าก็โทรเข้ามาหลายพอสมควรเนาะพวกเขาเฮ็ดอันระยะเวลาที่ 3-4 ปีคือว่าได้ผลแต่ยัง เป็นประเภทที่คดีนี่ยังบ่ทันได้เข้ามาให้ทนายเอาหรือว่ามาขอความช่วยเหลือจากทนายหันหลายเท่าบ่เท่ากับที่ว่าเขาเจ้าโทรมาขอคำปรึกษาเนาะอันนี้แสดงว่าส่วนหลายท่านเขาเจ้าจะโทรเข้ามาขอคำปรึกษาหลายกว่าเข้ามาตัวจริงแล้วเวลานั้นพวกเขาเฮ็ดละครแล้วก็มีสายด่วนอันเวลาออกอากาศอันโดยเฉพาะเราเว็บไซต์นี้จะมีอยู่สามแขวงเนาะคืออยู่นครหลวงเวียงจันทน์อยู่จำปาสักแล้วก็อยู่อุดมไสเนาะอันนี้นี่พวกเขาได้เฮ็ดในช่วงปี2006ถึง2009นี่แหละเนาะอันนี้นี่ขอแลกเปลี่ยนส่วนเฉพาะโดยแทนพับมันส่วนหลายแล้วจะมีแต่พนักงานสั้นกลางๆเนาะคือพนักงานขั้นเมืองขั้นอย่างบ่ที่ก็จะสนใจเรื่องกฎหมายก็จะโทรเข้ามาขอคำปรึกษาเรื่องกฎหมายโดยเฉพาะพวกนั้นเนาะอันนี้นี่คือว่าพวกเราเฮ็ดในขั้นต้นหั่นก็คือว่ามีความประสบผลสำเร็จในขั้นพื้นฐานเนาะอันนี้ขอแลกเปลี่ยนนำเจ้าขอเข้าใจ
Thank you, Kampoy. I'm going over chat messages. We have a message from Chanopma. And Chanopma, I'm not sure if Chanopma, if you would like to speak, you can unmute your. Okay. So the comment is from Silipon. Okay, Silipon, would you like to unmute your mic and speak in Lao, and then we can have it translated. Silipon.
เจ้าสบายดีขออนุญาตแลกเปลี่ยนเป็นภาษาลาวนะเจ้าเจ้าอันเนี้ยอิงตามที่ข้าพเจ้าได้พิมพ์ลงไปในแชทบอกเนาะก็คือ LDP ของพวกเราเนาะก็คือนำใช้รูปแบบของการให้คำปรึกษาแบบทางไกลอยู่เป็นประจำเนาะเนื่องจากว่าพวกเราเองแม่นได้เป็นทนายซี่น้ำให้กับห้องการให้คำปรึกษาที่อยู่ค่อนข้างที่จะอยู่ไกลกันแน่เนาะเพราะฉะนั้นรูปแบบที่พวกเราได้เขาจะมาเฮ็ดเรื่องพร้อมกันในทางไกลก็คือเขาจะนำใช้โทรศัพท์เนาะแล้วก็อีเมลอันนี้ก็เป็นการสื่อสารหลักเลยนอกจากนั้นก็จะเป็น WhatsApp เพราะมันค่อนข้างที่จะเฮ็ดได้ง่ายแล้วก็มันจะไวเนาะเพราะว่าส่วนใหญ่การขอคำปรึกษาของพวกเขาก็ค่อนข้างที่จะรีบด่วนและก็จำเป็นแน่เจ้าถ้าสมมุติว่าสิให้ไปซ่องหน้ากันมันก็คือค่อนข้างจะยากเพราะฉะนั้นเขาก็เลยนำใช้รูปแบบนี้เป็นประจำเจ้าขอเรียนซะนั้นเนาะเจ้าเข้าใจ
Thank you, Silipon. And then I see we have okay. Anybody else? Anybody from outside Lao who would like to share? Who would like to share any program or any program? So you may not be doing it now, but you are planning to do it. So what are you thinking? Irene.
Hi, good morning. I'm from the Philippines. I'm currently working in an NGO engaged in developmental lawyering in the Philippines. At the height of the pandemic, our organization launched a chatbot on Facebook Messenger. It's called Tisha Hostisha. And the chatbot has prepared responses for frequently asked questions related to pandemic like labor relations, vaccinations, etc. But people also have the option to talk to a lawyer where they can send their legal queries, and lawyers from our organization as well as volunteer lawyers will engage with them through chat and answer their legal queries. The advantage is that the organization is able to reach more people and is able to help them with their legal problems. One of the challenges I see is the opening up the platform to volunteer lawyers because of confidentiality and privacy issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. That's a different use of technology. No, the chatbot. There are ready-made answers to questions, to common questions. So that's from the Philippines. The program is called Tisha Justicia. And Irene, you did not mention the organization. Irene is from Ideals, no?
Yes, sir. It's from Ideals.
Okay. Okay. The organization is called Ideals. Thank you, Irene. Anybody else? We have a few more minutes before I turn the floor over to Ando. Or if you have questions, from, we still have Say, Mike, Michael, and Yevgen here. If you have questions, we have a few more minutes remaining. But I saw one question, one comment in the chat box earlier that I want to respond to. That is a question on internet connectivity. In rural communities, there may be internet connectivity may be difficult. The use of even phones or laptops may not be readily accessible. I just want to share that in the guide, one of the featured programs that we have is a program in the US where they provide, I'm not sure how this will be translated, a kiosk, or they provide a place where you can go and you can use a laptop or you can use a phone. So providing the equipment could also be part of the program for areas or for communities who do not have access. So you could have centers, internet centers, and you could provide the equipment, laptop or phone that they could use if they need something. If they have a need for, they have a question, they don't have internet in their homes, then that could be a model that can be used, providing a center, an internet center with the necessary equipment that can be used by those who are in need of legal services.
I'm glad you raised that, Marlon. So again, going back to the guide that we did, that one of the case studies in the guide, and Marlon, you put the guide link in earlier, but maybe we could do it again so we have it at the end. That would be, you seem to have it handy. One of the case studies in the guide is a group called Kids in Need of Defense, KIND, KIND, and they provide a service very much like what Marlon was just describing. There are kiosks that are available for remote participation, for video calls and mobile phone distribution and those types of things. So this is based in the United States, where I live in California, but it's a great program. Those people who do not have access to technology can go to a kiosk and use that to seek legal services. So you may want to take a look at that case study in the guide if that's something of interest to you, and look at KIND, KIND.
Andrew, we have 5 more minutes. I will turn the floor back to you for any final comments.
Yeah, well, my only final comments is how valuable I think these sessions are, to hear from people and hear what they're doing, and to hear what the challenges are, and to share ideas, because that's how we all learn and do our jobs better. I do think providing legal services remotely is going to be a very, very big part of what we do in the future. It is now, but will continue to be a big part of how we provide legal services. And because it's so efficient, it's a great way to do it. As technology is more accessible to more people, I think some of the challenges we've heard about today in terms of people either not having access to the technology or not understanding it, it will get easier and easier, but it's through sharing in this way that we will all learn to do a better job in terms of how to provide services remotely. I'd really like to thank Yevgen, Say, and Michael. Those were fantastic presentations, and I know I learned a lot about what you do and some of the, I'm already thinking of ways I might do things a little differently given what you said. But you seem to all have really embraced what you're doing and how you're doing it, and it's great work. So thank you for taking the time and participating with us today. And so with that, I don't know if Marlon or Sarah or any Yevgen, Say, Michael want to add any final comments, but we are getting close to the end of our time. And I thank everyone for taking time today to be part of this session. I think we all learned a lot.
Just again, a final call to let us know if you have tried online legal services. Let us know, and we'll be happy to share that and to provide any support needed. Sorry, Michael.
Okay, thank you. I think to every participant and to the organizers of this conference, I think it is a noble idea. It has come at the right time. And one thing that I would love to encourage, that the things I learned about COVID, let situations not push us to learn. I think human beings are innovative, and let us start thinking outside the box. And to me, I can say access to justice is like building blocks. It is not a one pipe that only one person can hold. It is like building blocks, and when we bring each and every unique strength, unique opportunity together, then we will reach where we can be. And one thing that I can say is, like, we have different stakeholders, and I would encourage the organizers of this conference and the initiators of this great idea to start looking at the different stakeholders, not only lawyers. Let us look at the different sectors, like the corporate sector, the business sector, the entrepreneurs, and the people who are developing these technologies. What is their take, and what can they bring to the table, so that every effort is consolidated to address this? Because again, it is also an opportunity. Like when they're developing technology, when they're developing new apps, it will be a business to them. So there are people who are seeking justice, and there are people who can also use this platform as an opportunity of building their companies and bringing products which can be consumed in the market. Otherwise, thank you so much.
So thank you. Yeah, that's great. And Yevgen, I see you got your hand up. We're going to give you the last word, all right? And go ahead.
Yes, Andrew, I tried briefly. Dear colleagues, I think, of course, we have to pay attention to all of these risks and obstacles in providing legal services. But I think, and I'm sure that technology, this is the great advantage which enhancing our efforts in enhancing access to justice. So it's not a future, it's our reality which help us to overcome crises. So let's find opportunities to overcome obstacles, and let's try to learn, as our colleagues mentioned, educate our clients, and to use these advantages of the technologies as more as it could be powerful in our legal empowerment and access to justice work. Thank you for this fruitful discussion, very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can't think of a better way to end it than what you just said. Let's find opportunities to overcome obstacles. That's really what we're all about and what we're trying to achieve. So with that, I'd ask the Secretariat to, if people are looking for a certificate, to have a last word. I'm sorry, it's a certificate for as part of the Access to Justice Exchange. We have a magic word, and do we have it? It's being, okay, mediation. Mediation is the magic word if you're collecting words as part of the Access to Justice Exchange. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to this session. Thank you to all the participants. I thought it was a great session. I know I learned a lot, and I hope you have a great rest of the Access to Justice Exchange. And thank you to the Secretariat for making this possible.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everybody. It was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, C.
Bye. Thank you so much
See you
for
again.
the
Bye.
experience.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Secretariat, for the support. Thank you. Bye-bye. Cherry, Nana,
Thank you.
Ju, Pa. Thank you, Pa. Tony, bye-bye.